I'm not much for going around telling what happens to me on the road, but this thing I lived through, buddy, I can't get it out of my head. And believe me, I've seen strange things in my years behind the wheel, but nothing like this. At first, I thought it was just a simple ride like so many others. But what came after was something else, something that even today is hard for me to believe, and that's why I tell it. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 52 years old, and I've been rolling on these highways for almost 28 years. My house is an old Peterbilt 579, midnight blue with chrome details, that I call Big Bertha. She's worn but reliable, and with her I've crossed most of the American West since the days when CB radios were king. I'm an owner-operator, which means I work for myself, haul what I want, and answer to nobody but the dot and my own conscience. That afternoon I was coming down from Lowe's Angels heading toward Denver, without hurry but with the duty of delivering a load of automotive parts to a warehouse in Colorado. Everything was calm, too calm, I'd say. The heat hit hard on Interstate 15 through Nevada, the kind that cooks your back from the inside even if you have the air conditioning full blast. And me, well, I was half disconnected, thinking about my stuff, about life, listening to some classic rock on the radio. I've got rules about the road that have kept me safe all these years. Don't pick up hitchhikers. Don't get involved in other people's business. Keep your eyes on your own lane and your cargo secure. These rules aren't suggestions. They're survival tactics in a world where one wrong decision can cost you everything. I learned them the hard way, and I've never broken them. Until that day. When I saw her, she was standing alone at the edge of the road, right before a curve with no signposts. The first thing I thought was that's not normal. It was the middle of nowhere, nothing but desert scrub and Joshua trees for miles in either direction. The heat was pushing 115 degrees, and there she was with two little kids, waving frantically at every truck that passed. Most drivers don't stop anymore. Too many stories of setups, robberies, worse things. But something about the scene made me ease off the throttle. Maybe it was the way one of the kids was sitting in whatever shade they could find next to a beat-up Honda Civic with its hood propped open. Maybe it was how the woman looked genuinely desperate, not like she was putting on an act. I pulled Big Bertha onto the shoulder about 50 yards past them and sat there for a minute, engine idling, air conditioning running. Through my mirrors I could see the woman jogging toward my truck, and that's when I noticed she was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back and clothes that looked like she'd been traveling hard. Behind her, those two kids stayed put by their car, smart enough not to run toward a stranger's truck. Against every instinct I'd developed over nearly 3 decades on the road, I climbed down from my cab. "Thank God you stopped," she said, breathing hard from her jog in the heat. "Our car broke down about an hour ago. No cell signal out here. I've been trying to flag down help, but nobody's stopping." Her accent was slight, maybe Southwest, and her English was perfect, but there was something in her eyes that made me keep my distance. Not dangerous exactly, but scared, really scared. "What's wrong with the car?" I asked, wiping sweat from my forehead. "I don't know, it just died. Engine won't turn over, nothing." She gestured back toward the Honda. "I've got my kids with me, 6 and 4 years old. We need to get somewhere with air conditioning before they get heat stroke." I walked over to take a look at their situation. The car was old, maybe 10 years, and it had been driven hard. Dust covered everything, and I could see water stains on the upholstery through the windows. The two kids looked up at me with big brown eyes, the older one a girl who was trying to be brave, the younger one a boy who looked ready to cry. "I'm Alina," the girl said politely. "This is my brother Diego." "Hi there," I said, crouching down to their level. "I'm Jake. You guys doing okay?" The boy nodded but didn't say anything. The girl looked at her mother, then back at me. "Mommy says we're going to see family in California," Alina said, "but our car is broken." I popped the hood of the Honda and took a look. The engine was hot enough to fry an egg, and even without tools I could tell the cooling system had failed catastrophically. Cracked radiator, blown hoses, the works. This car wasn't going anywhere without a tow truck and a shop. "Ma'am," I called to the woman, who I realized hadn't told me her name yet. "This car's done. You're looking at major repairs, and there's no shop for 60 miles." She closed her eyes for a moment, and I saw her shoulders sag. When she opened them again, there was something desperate there that made my chest tight. "Is there any way you could give us a ride to the next town? I can pay you." She reached into a small backpack, the only luggage I could see, and pulled out a roll of bills that looked thick enough to choke a horse. "Please. My children need to get out of this heat." Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. Nobody carries that kind of cash unless they're running from something or towards something, and neither option usually ends well for the Good Samaritan. But looking at those kids, sweating in the shade of a dead car in the middle of the desert, I found myself nodding. "Next town is Barstow," I said. "About 40 miles. You can catch a bus from there to wherever you're going." The relief on her face was so complete that I almost felt bad for being suspicious. "Almost? Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much. I'm Maria, by the way, Maria Santos." And that's how it started. That's how I broke my own rules and let 3 strangers into Big Bertha's cab, thinking I was just giving a family a ride to safety. If I'd known what was coming, what those next few days would cost all of us, I might have made a different choice. But probably not. Looking back now, seeing Alina's drawing taped to my dashboard, I know I'd do it again. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when we reached the truck stop in Barstow. Maria had been quiet during the ride, checking the mirrors every few minutes and jumping whenever a car passed us. Alina had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder, and Diego was drawing pictures on the back of one of my delivery receipts. But Maria stayed alert, tense, like a deer that knows there's a hunter nearby. I pulled Big Bertha up to the diesel pumps and shut her down. The truck stop was one of those big chain operations with a restaurant, showers, and a convenience store that sold everything from motor oil to souvenirs. A few other rigs were parked in the lot, drivers taking their mandatory rest breaks or grabbing a meal. "I'll go in and get some drinks for the kids," I said, reaching for my wallet. "You want anything?" Maria's reaction surprised me. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in tight enough to leave marks. "No," she said quickly. "I mean, we'll wait here in the truck, with the air conditioning running." I looked at her for a long moment. The temperature outside was still over 100 degrees, but most people would want to stretch their legs after being cramped in a truck cab for 40 miles. Most people would want to use a real bathroom instead of waiting. "You sure? The kids might want to use the restroom." "We're fine," Maria said, but her voice had that brittle quality that meant she was anything but fine. "Just get whatever you think they'd like to drink." I climbed down from the cab, but instead of heading straight into the store, I took a walk around Big Bertha, checking my tires and lights like I always do. That's when I noticed the black SUV parked at the far end of the lot, engine running, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Nothing unusual about that, except for the way it was positioned to have a clear view of the fuel islands. Inside the truck stop, I grabbed a couple of juice boxes and some crackers for the kids, a bottle of water for Maria, and a fresh thermos of coffee for myself. The clerk was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who smiled when she saw the juice boxes. "Got some little passengers today?" she asked. "Giving a family a ride," I said. "Their car broke down out in the desert." "That's nice of you. Not many folks stop to help anymore." She rang up my purchases. "You be careful, though." Had some people asking about trucks earlier, said they were looking for someone. My blood went cold. "What kind of people?" "3 men in suits, not from around here, I could tell. Had that city look, you know. They seemed real interested in any truck that might have picked up passengers between here and Vegas." I paid for my purchases and walked back to Big Bertha as casually as I could manage, but my mind was racing. When I climbed back into the cab, Maria took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. "Tell me the truth," I said, handing out the drinks. "All of it. Because whatever you're running from just caught up with us." Maria's hand started shaking as she opened Diego's juice box. Elena was still asleep, but Diego looked back and forth between his mother and me with worried eyes. "I can't," Maria whispered. "It's too dangerous." "More dangerous than whatever's in that black SUV that's been following us?" I asked. She went white. "You saw them." "Lady, I've been driving trucks for 28 years. I notice when the same vehicle shows up in my mirrors more than twice." I started Big Bertha's engine. "Now you can either tell me what's going on, or I can drop you off right here and let you deal with it yourself." Maria closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. When she opened them again, there were tears there. "My husband Roberto was killed 2 months ago," she said quietly. "He worked as an accountant for some businesses in Phoenix. I thought it was just regular companies, but it turned out he was keeping books for people who wash money through legitimate businesses." Diego had stopped coloring and was listening, even though I could tell he didn't understand most of what his mother was saying. Roberto got scared when he figured out what was really going on. He tried to get out, tried to go to the authorities, but before he could testify, they killed him. Made it look like a robbery, but I knew better. I pulled out of the truck stop and got back on the highway, keeping one eye on the mirrors. Sure enough, the black SUV followed us onto the on-ramp. "Why are they after you?" I asked. "Because Roberto hid something before he died. Evidence. Financial records that could put a lot of people in prison for a very long time." She reached into her backpack and pulled out Elena's stuffed teddy bear, unzipped a small opening in the back, and showed me a USB drive. "It's all on here, and they know you have it. They know Roberto had it. They think I know where it is." She zipped the bear back up and handed it to Diego. "They've been hunting us for 2 months. Every time we think we're safe, they find us again." My CB radio crackled to life. It was Tommy Wilson, my buddy who runs freight between Phoenix and Los Angeles. "Diesel, you out there?" Tommy's voice came through the static. I picked up the mic. "Go ahead, gear shift. Had some interesting visitors at the truck stop in Needles about an hour ago. 3 men in suits asking about your rig. Specifically wanted to know if anyone had seen you pick up passengers. Thought you should know." I looked at Maria, who had gone even paler if that was possible. "Thanks for the heads up, buddy. I owe you one. You need backup, you call me. I'm about 50 miles behind you on 15. I hung up the mic and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of taking the exit toward Los Angeles like I'd planned, I stayed on 15 north toward Las Vegas, then took a series of smaller highways that most people don't even know exist. Truck routes that wind through the desert, connecting small towns and industrial areas. "Where are we going?" Maria asked. "Somewhere they can't follow us as easily," I said. "But first, you need to tell me everything, because if we're going to get through this, I need to know exactly what we're up against." Elena woke up then, rubbing her eyes and looking around at the unfamiliar landscape rushing past the windows. "Are we almost there, Mommy?" she asked sleepily. Maria smoothed her daughter's hair and tried to smile. "We're getting closer, baby." But I could see in her eyes that she had no idea where we were going or how this was going to end. And neither did I. The truck stop in the middle of the Mojave Desert was one of those places that exists for no other reason than to serve the drivers who haul freight through the emptiest parts of America. Just a fuel island, a small building with restrooms and vending machines, and a parking area big enough for maybe a dozen rigs. It was the kind of place where you could disappear for a while, which was exactly what I thought we needed. I'd been driving for 6 hours straight, taking every back road and trucker route I knew, trying to shake our tail. The black SUV had stayed with us for the first 3 hours, always keeping its distance but never quite disappearing from my mirrors. Then somewhere around Barstow, I'd lost sight of it, and I'd started to hope maybe we'd finally given them the slip. Big Bertha was running low on fuel, and the kids needed a break. Diego had been asking about bathrooms for the last hour, and Elena was getting cranky from being cooped up in the cab for so long. Maria hadn't said much since she'd told me about her husband, just sat there clutching that teddy bear like it contained the secrets of the universe. Which I guess it did. "We'll stop here for a few minutes," I said, pulling up to the diesel pump. Fuel up, stretch our legs, then figure out where we're going next. The place looked deserted except for two other trucks parked at the far end of the lot and what looked like an old freightliner getting repairs at the service bay. The kind of peaceful, middle-of-nowhere stop where truckers could take a nap without worrying about someone bothering them. Then I saw the black SUV. It was parked behind the service building, almost hidden from view. If I hadn't walked around Big Bertha to check my trailer connections, I might have missed it completely. But there it was, engine running, waiting. "Stay in the truck," I told Maria, trying to keep my voice calm so the kids wouldn't panic. "Lock the doors. If anything happens, you hit that CB radio and call for help on channel 19. "Jake, don't," Maria said, but I was already climbing down from the cab. I walked into the truck stop building like I didn't have a care in the world, bought a cup of coffee and a candy bar, made small talk with the clerk about the weather. Through the window, I could see three men in dark suits walking toward Big Bertha. They moved like professionals, spreading out to cover different angles, one of them talking into a phone. The lead man was tall and thin, with the kind of face that belonged in a boardroom or a courtroom, not a desert truck stop. He knocked on Big Bertha's passenger door with the confidence of someone who expected to be obeyed. I couldn't hear what he was saying from inside the building, but I could see Maria shaking her head, see Alina and Diego pressed against the back wall of the cab, terrified. The man knocked again, harder this time, and when Maria still didn't open the door, he pulled something from inside his jacket. That's when I knew there was no talking our way out of this. I walked out of the building with my hands visible, trying to look like just another trucker who didn't want any trouble. "Afternoon, gentlemen," I called out. "Something I can help you with." The tall man turned toward me, and I saw that what he'd pulled from his jacket was a pistol, held low and casual like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You can step away from the truck," he said. His voice had a slight accent, maybe Mexican, and the kind of authority that came from being used to having people do what he said. "This doesn't concern you." "Well, see, that's where you're wrong," I replied, stopping about 10 feet away from him. "That's my truck and those folks are my passengers, so it concerns me plenty." One of the other men, shorter and stockier, moved to flank me from the left. The third one stayed by the truck, keeping watch on Maria and the kids. "My name is Carlos Vega," the tall man said. "The woman in your truck has something that belongs to my employers. All we want is to have a conversation with her about returning it." "Seems like she doesn't want to have that conversation." Vega smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made my skin crawl. "I'm afraid she doesn't have a choice in the matter. Neither do her children, or you, for that matter." That's when I understood that this wasn't going to end with them taking Maria and driving away. They weren't here to negotiate or make deals. They were here to tie up loose ends permanently. "Look," I said, raising my hand slightly. "I'm just a truck driver. I don't know anything about your business and I don't want to. How about I just walk away, pretend this never happened?" "I'm afraid that's not possible," Vega said. "You've seen too much, heard too much, and we can't have witnesses." Behind him, I could see Maria climbing out of the truck with the teddy bear in her hands. Alina and Diego stayed inside, both of them crying now. "I have what you want," Maria called out. "Right here. Let the children go and you can have it." Vega looked at her with the same cold smile. "Senora Santos, you misunderstand the situation. We're not here to make trades. We're here to clean up a mess that your husband created." That's when it hit me. They weren't planning to let any of us walk away from this. Not Maria, not the kids, not me. This wasn't about retrieving stolen information. This was about making sure no one could ever testify about what Roberto Santos had discovered. I thought about my own kids, about how they'd been Alina and Diego's age once. I thought about all the times I'd driven past trouble on the highway, minding my own business, following my rules about not getting involved. I thought about the drawing Alina had made earlier, a picture of our truck with all four of us smiling inside it. And I made a choice that went against everything I'd learned in 28 years on the road. "Maria, get back in the truck," I said quietly. "Get the kids down on the floor." Vega raised his pistol, pointing it directly at my chest. "I don't think you understand the gravity of your situation, senor." "Oh, I understand it just fine," I said, and hit the air horn on Big Bertha's remote starter. The sound split the desert air like a thunderclap, loud enough to wake the dead and sharp enough to make everyone jump. It was also the signal I'd arranged with other truckers years ago, back when CB radios were the only way to call for help in emergencies. The two other drivers in the lot came running, and I could hear the distant sound of more trucks approaching on the highway. Truckers look out for each other, and when one of us calls for help, the others come running. But Vega wasn't the kind of man who scared easily. He kept the gun pointed at me and nodded to his associates. "Kill them all," he said simply, and that's when the real trouble started. The next few seconds happened so fast they're still a blur in my memory. Vega's finger was moving toward the trigger when I dove toward Big Bertha's cab, shouting for Maria to get the kids down. The other truckers who'd responded to my air horn signal scattered for cover behind their rigs, smart enough to know gunfire when they were about to hear it. I yanked open the driver's door and threw myself inside just as the first shot rang out, the bullet punching through the passenger window and spiderwebbing the glass. Maria had Alina and Diego pressed down in the sleeper berth, both kids crying but unhurt. "Hold on tight," I yelled, firing up Big Bertha's engine. The Peterbilt roared to life, and I threw her into gear without waiting for the air brakes to fully release. 18 wheels of Detroit steel and chrome lurched forward, and I aimed her straight at the black SUV parked behind the service building. Vega and his men scattered like leaves in a hurricane as 40 tons of truck and trailer bore down on them. The SUV's driver tried to back out of the way, but Big Bertha caught the rear quarter panel and spun the vehicle sideways into a concrete barrier. The impact threw Vega to the ground and sent his pistol skittering across the asphalt. I didn't stop to see if he was hurt. I cranked the wheel hard left and headed for the highway, tires smoking and engine screaming. In the mirrors, I could see the other truckers moving to block the damaged SUV, buying us precious seconds to escape. "Is everyone okay back there?" I called over the noise of the engine. "We're okay," Maria answered, her voice shaky but determined. "But they'll have more people. They'll call for backup." She was right. These weren't the kind of people who gave up easy, and they'd have resources we couldn't match. But I had something they didn't have. I knew these roads better than my own backyard, and I had friends scattered across 3 states who'd help a fellow trucker in trouble without asking too many questions. I grabbed the CB microphone and switched to channel 19. "This is Diesel calling any eastbound traffic on 15. I need eyes on a black SUV, Nevada plates, probably damaged on the rear end. These people are dangerous, do not approach, just report their position." Responses started coming in immediately. That's the thing about truckers that people don't understand. We're like a family out here, spread across thousands of miles of highway but connected by radio waves and a code that says you help your own. "Diesel, this is Roadrunner about 20 miles east of your position. I see 2 black SUVs heading west fast, no damage visible. You got company coming." My blood went cold. 2 more vehicles meant at least 6 more men, probably better armed and definitely more prepared than the 3 we just escaped from. "Maria, that USB drive," I said. "How many copies are there?" "Just this one," she said, clutching the teddy bear. Roberto was careful. He said if there were multiple copies, they'd never stop hunting us. "Then we need to get it to someone who can use it. Someone in law enforcement who can't be bought." She shook her head. "Roberto tried that. He had a contact in the FBI, someone he trusted. That's how they found him. There's a leak somewhere, someone on their payroll." We were approaching a junction where 3 different highways met, and I had to make a decision fast. East toward Las Vegas would put us in heavy traffic where we could blend in, but it would also put innocent people in danger. North toward Utah was mostly empty desert where we'd be easy to spot. South toward Arizona would take us deeper into cartel territory. I chose the 4th option, and took the off-ramp toward a small town called Amboy, population maybe 100 people on a good day. It wasn't on any of the main trucking routes, just a forgotten dot on the map with a single road leading in and out. "Where are we going?" Maria asked. "Somewhere they won't expect," I said. "I've got a friend who runs a small repair shop out here. Ex-military, the kind of guy who knows how to keep his mouth shut and his shotgun loaded." But as we rolled into Amboy 20 minutes later, I could see we were too late. The black SUVs were already there, parked in front of the only gas station in town. Vega was standing beside one of them, talking on a phone and pointing in our direction. They'd figured out where we were heading and beat us there. These people had resources I hadn't counted on, maybe satellite tracking or access to traffic cameras. Either way, we were trapped. The town's main street was barely 2 lanes wide, with the repair shop at the far end and the gas station blocking our only way out. I could try to ram through again, but not without risking innocent lives. I could see people coming out of buildings to stare at the unusual activity, including kids who'd been playing in a small park. I pulled Big Bertha to a stop about 100 yards from the gas station and shut off the engine. "What are you doing?" Maria asked, panic in her voice. "Something I should have done hours ago," I said, reaching for my cell phone. "I'm calling the cavalry." I dialed a number I'd memorized years ago but never had reason to use. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Highway Patrol Dispatch, this is Sergeant Martinez." "This is Jake Morrison, CDL number 47,539. I'm reporting a kidnapping in progress and requesting immediate assistance." I gave them our location and a quick summary of the situation, emphasizing that there were children involved and armed men threatening civilians. Maria listened with growing hope as I described Vega and his associates, the black SUVs, and the evidence she carried. "Units are en route," Martinez said. "ETA 12 minutes. Can you maintain your position?" "We'll do our best," I said, but I could already see Vega's men spreading out, surrounding us. Through the CB radio, I heard Tommy Wilson's voice. "Diesel, this is Gear Shift. I'm about 5 minutes out with 4 other drivers. We heard the chatter and came running." And that's when I realized we might actually have a chance. Not just Maria and the kids and me, but justice for Roberto Santos and all the other people these criminals had hurt. I looked at Alina's drawing still taped to my dashboard, then at the real Alina huddled in the back of my cab with her mother and brother. Sometimes the most important thing you can haul isn't freight, it's hope. The sound of sirens was growing louder in the distance, and I could see dust clouds on the horizon that meant more trucks were coming. Vega had made one critical mistake. He'd cornered us in a place where good people still looked out for each other. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in hours, I believed we were going to win.